I did things like drove 75 miles to see a re-release of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, yeah.
I drove halfway across the state once to see Duck You Sucker, which was
Yeah.
Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when if you were a film fan, you had to go to hell and back to see
You
things.
had to work for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are two examples.
As an actor, how is this filtering into your writing process? I mean, as someone who knows what an actor wants and what an actor needs, did that help inform, when you were creating these characters, going, man, this is a great juicy moment, or this character really needs more of this? What a writer wouldn't kind of think about?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
I think the acting has been an enormous help because I spent a good deal of my life in scene study classes. We would put scenes up in the actor's studio or any of the actors. I mean, Stella Adler, by the way, was the best that I ever studied with.
Yeah.
We used to do scenes. You would get assigned a scene. This is in class. You would get together with your partner or partners. You'd memorize the lines. You'd rehearse before you came in and did it, and then you'd do it, and it had a real weight to it. That devolved over the years into what they call cold reading classes, which are now epidemic in Hollywood, which is to say you don't even have to bother to memorize the lines anymore. They give you scripts when you walk in. They make it easy to sell the classes, and you don't get the same rigorous training that they did. I suppose everybody who says this who gets to a certain point in their life, but I started at Northwestern Theater School. I was also accepted at Carnegie Tech. They were the two theater schools.
Yeah.
I started out in theater. I started out at Bucks County Playhouse in Bucks County, Pennsylvania as an apprentice. I did winter stock, summer stock, off-Broadway. What it did is it gave me a tremendous background in putting scenes on their feet and making them play. I can block a scene, and I can block it for camera, I can block it for sight lines in a theater. And so it was enormously helpful in terms of writing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, all I had been doing for years was doing scenes based on, in those days that we didn't do screenplays. Now they do screenplays, but it was on the best plays. I had done, not on the boards, but in scene study class, I'd done all the great dramatists. I started doing plays for the playwrights wing.
Yeah.
And there were aspiring playwrights in the Actors Studio here in LA, and we put up these one-act plays. And I met a whole bunch of people that were writing and were using writing to get into directing. I learned in the Actors Studio that writing was a way to get in. And I was never, at some point, and it was probably when I was like 25, 26, 27, I outgrew acting.
Yeah.
I started to see the whole thing. And what happens, actors are treated like genius children, but children nevertheless.
Yeah.
And so it was not an easy transition, because this was before the time when everybody working in a restaurant had a script under their arms, but it still was, people tended to think actors weren't that bright. So what I did is I started to write, and I sort of stopped telling people that I started as an actor.
Yeah.
And so people forgot until Adam cast me in Hatchet 2, which is my first job in 28 years. So I transitioned out of it, and it was not easy. I starved for about 5 or 6 years, but I started to become a substantial TV movie of the week writer.
Yeah.
I wrote The Initiation of Sarah, which was famous at the time. It was Morgan Fairchild's first acting role, or the first one that introduced her big. And the girls were they had a fight and were throwing it up in a fountain.
Yeah.
And they came out with wet t-shirts and you could see their nipples. And this was a huge scandal.
Of course.
And I had written it. And off of that, I started to get some visibility and started to get some feature jobs.
Yeah.
But I wasn't writing series. I was always writing, essentially the long form movie. What originally got me to write was that I wanted to direct.
Yeah.
And in those days, and even now, it was very, very hard to get directing jobs. And I was 2 and 3 scripts back all the time
Yeah.
because I was so hot as a writer. I went on from there to do Cloak and Dagger.
So, your friend cut off radio contact, did she?
Oh, hi, Jack.
Well, some people just don't know how to act on a secret mission. I guess we're better off just handling this one on our own.
They offered me the remake of Cape Fear, and Scorsese ended up doing it. Richard was in the mix for a while. Richard went out. Then Richard was going to do a script that I had, that then I wrote subsequently after that, called Scream for Help.
My name is Christina Ruth Cromwell. I'm 17, and I live in New Rochelle. I think my stepfather is trying to murder my mother.
You go from being somebody who's scraping by in the independent world, which was Rich's case out of Australia. He was a USC film graduate, to all of a sudden being in the mix of Hollywood, and people want bigger budgeted films. And I wrote a low budget called Scream for Help. He was going to do it, he dumped out, and Michael Winter ended up doing it, and a lovely man, and the film was unreleasable.